I bid to all my fellow friends and especially to my lecturer, Associate Professor Dr. Hafiz. First of all, let me introduce myself first. I am Emylia Natasya binti Kamarul Bahrin from second year applied physics student. So, in this video, I'm going to present about the Chernobyl Nuclear Accident, which is the worst man-made disaster in human history that occurred in 1986. First of all, Chernobyl is located in northern Ukraine, 10 miles away from Belarus and 80 miles north of Kiev. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant is located near the city of Pripyat in the north of Soviet Ukraine. The power plant consists of 4 reactors which produce 10% of the Ukraine's electricity. The construction began in the 1970s. Reactor number 4 was complete in 1983. At that time of accident, reactor number 5 and 6 were still in progress. The type of nuclear reactor used is RBMK reactor, which the acronym Reactor of High Power of the Channel type. This is being translated roughly by a Russian. The reactor was cooled by water and moderated by graphite. Next, I will explain about the reactor plant scenario. The reactor plant scenario started as the reaction occurs where the uranium fuels become hot. Next, the water pumped through the core in pressure tube removes the heat winds from the fuels. The water is then boiled into steam and the steam turns the turbines. The water is then cooled and the process repeats. The nuclear accident started with the engineers working at the Chernobyl's number 4 reactor did a test on the evening of 25 April 1986. The experiment was to see whether the pump's cooling system could still run using power generated from the reactor under low power if the auxiliary electricity supply failed. The experiment begins at the 11 p.m. at night on 25 April. The control rods which are used to regulate the fission process in a nuclear reactor were lowered. The fission process being the process used to absorb neutrons, thus slowing the initial change reaction. When the engineer lowered the rod, it reduced the output of the reactor by 20% of the normal output required for a test. The problem begins when the engineer lowered the control rod. They lowered it too many, making the output drop too quickly, it causing an almost complete shutdown of the reactor. The problem wasn't when the output dropped so quickly that the safety system were disabled at that moment. The engineers were concerned about possible instability, so they began to raise the rod in hope of increasing the output. At 12:30 a.m. in the morning of 26 April, they decide to continue. By 1 a.m. in the morning of 26 April, the power reactor was only about 71%, So the engineer raised more rods in order to raise the power. The engineer disabled the reactor's automatic shutdown system to allow the reactor work under low power condition. Control rods were again raised by the engineer to increase the power. By 1:23 a.m. in the morning of 26 April, the power reached to 12% and the decision was made to carry on with the experiment. Only after a few seconds through, the power suddenly surged to dangerous level. This caused the reactor to overheat. The water in the cooling system started to steam. At this point, there were only 6 control rods remain in the reactor core. The minimum safe operating number was 30. At 1:24 on the morning of 26 April, the first 2 explosions occurred and caused the reactor's roof to blow off and the content to erupt out. The roof being blown off caused air to get into the reactor and ignite the carbon monoxide gas, causing a reactor fire. The reactor fire burned for 9 days. They believe there are 2 causes of the nuclear accident, which are firstly, the blame of power plant operation. Secondly, less critical of the operation and place greater emphasis on the design of the reactor itself. On 27 April 1986, the first photo to be taken of the reactor after 14 hours after the explosion. 70% of the radioactive material was blown into the neighboring country of Belarus. In all 150,000 square kilometers in Belarus, Russia, Ukraine were contaminated. Basically, there are 4 groups of Chernobyl catastrophe victims, which are the first group was the person that involved in the cleanup operation at the Chernobyl nuclear plant, which called liquidators. The second group are the person from the exclusion zone in 1986. The third group are the person which resident in the territories monitored or resident there immediately after the accident. The last group are the children born to parents in the first to third group. The immediate impact from the accident were 231 people were hospitalized immediately due to acute radiation sickness, and 31 of them were eventually died. Most of these people were workers in the plant or the local firefighters. The cleanup were doing by the liquidators and the robots. Hundreds of thousands of people had to be evacuated due to the following of the accident, and between 1990 to 1995, an additional 210,000 people were resettled. Long-term effects of the accident are international spread of radioactive, residual radioactive on the environment, socio-economical impact, radioactive release, and health impact. most health impact is thyroid cancer. A large increase in the incidence of thyroid cancer has occurred among young children and adolescents at that time of the accident and live in the most contaminated areas of Belarus, the Russian Federation, and Ukraine. This was due to the release of high levels of radioactive iodine. Radioactive iodine was deposited in pastures eaten by calves, who then concentrated it in their milk, which was subsequently drunk by children. Next health impact is leukemia and non-solid thyroid cancer. This is due to ionizing radiation is a known cause of certain type of leukemia, which called a malignancy of blood cells. An elevated risk of leukemia was first found among the survivors of the atomic bombing in Japan, some 2 to 5 years after exposure. Recent investigators suggest a doubling of the incidence of leukemia among the most highly exposed Chernobyl liquidators. Reports indicate a small increase in the incidence of premenopausal breast cancer in the most contaminated areas, which appear to be related to radiation dose. Need confirmation in well-designed epidemiological studies. The next health impact is cataracts. The lens of the eyes is very sensitive to ionizing radiation, and cataracts are known to result from effective doses of about 2 SV. The production of cataracts is directly related to the dose. The higher the dose, the faster the cataracts appears. Chernobyl cataract studies suggest that radiation opacities may occur from doses as low as 250 mSv. Next was cardiovascular disease. A large Russian study among emergency workers has suggested an increased risk of death from cardiovascular disease in highly exposed individuals. While this finding needs further study with longer follow-up times, it is consistent with other studies. For example, on radiotherapy, patients who receive considerably higher doses to the heart. Health impact is mental health and psychological effect. This is due to high level of stress, anxiety, and medically unexplained physical symptoms continue to be reported among those affected by the accident. Lastly, the health impact is reproductive and hereditary effect and children's health. For example, birth defect and infertility. There are some action that has been done to reduce the exposure in the contaminated areas, such as the Soviet and Commonwealth of Independent States (CIS) authorities introduced a wide range of short and long-term environmental countermeasures to mitigate the accident negative consequences. Besides, the restriction also had been done by the government. Some lessons that we can learn from the Chernobyl Nuclear Accident. Firstly, the cost of ensuring the safety of nuclear facilities is significantly lower than of dealing with accident consequences. Large-scale man-made accidents cause great social and economic damage to countries located in their influence. Hundreds of billion US dollars worth of direct and indirect damage have been reported by Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine as a result of the Chernobyl power plant accident. Currently, the scale of material and financial losses in mitigating the consequences of the Chernobyl accident provide compelling evidence of extremely high price of errors and shortcomings when ensuring the safety of the nuclear power plants and of the need for strict compliance with international safety requirements during their design, construction, and operation. Next, the accident has shown the importance of strict compliance with the basic and technical safety principles for the nuclear power plants of continuous analysis of operating nuclear power plant and of thoroughly upgrading in order to eliminate deviations of active study and the introduction of leading world experience and of taking true account of human factor. Lastly, the accident has demonstrated the need to establish and support a high-level national emergency response system in case of man-made accidents. I think that's all from me, and I hope that all of you will understand my presentation well, and thank you for watching.